Mark Winters clutched his daughter's small hand as they rushed through the gleaming lobby of Everest Industries. He never planned to bring 7-year-old Lily to his interview, but when the babysitter canceled last minute and the school called about Lily's fever, he had no choice. As they approached the receptionist, Mark's heart pounded. This job could change everything for them, if he hadn't already ruined his chances. Little did he know, CEO Alexander Reid was watching from across the lobby, about to witness something that would shake the foundations of his billion-dollar empire and force him to confront the emptiness of his own success. If you're moved by stories of unexpected courage and second chances, hit that like button and subscribe to see more life-changing moments that remind us what truly matters. The morning had started like any other in Mark's small apartment. The alarm blared at 5:30 a.m., giving him just enough time to prepare Lily's lunch, iron his only decent shirt, and review his resume one last time before dropping her at school. This interview at Everest Industries was his 7th in 2 months, and possibly his last chance before the eviction notice on their door became reality. "Daddy, I don't feel good," Lily had mumbled as he helped her into her unicorn sweater. Her forehead felt warm, but Mark convinced himself it was just nerves. They both had important days ahead. He had his interview, and she had her math test she'd been studying for all week. "Maybe you're just excited about showing Mrs. Peterson how good you are at multiplication," he said, trying to sound cheerful while checking his watch. They were already running late. He dropped Lily at school with a kiss on her forehead and a promise to pick her up early so they could celebrate his new job with ice cream. The confidence in his voice masked the doubt that had been his constant companion since Emily's death 3 years ago. His wife's battle with cancer had left them with mountains of medical debt and a hole in their lives that no amount of time seemed to fill. The text from Mrs. Rodriguez came just as Mark was parking near the towering glass headquarters of Everest Industries. "Emergency with my mother. Can't watch Lily tonight. So sorry." Before he could process this complication, his phone rang. It was the school. "Mr. Winters? This is Nurse Patel. Lily has a fever of 101. She needs to be picked up immediately." Mark's carefully constructed plan crumbled. The interview was in 30 minutes. Rescheduling wasn't an option. The HR manager had made it clear this was the final round of interviews for the senior accounting position. After being laid off from his previous job when the company downsized, Mark had been surviving on freelance bookkeeping work that barely covered their rent. 25 minutes later, Mark stood in the Everest Industries lobby, his resume folder in one hand and Lily's small, warm hand in the other. She clutched her stuffed rabbit, Mr. Flopsy, while Mark approached the receptionist with what he hoped was a confident smile. "Mark Winters for the 10:30 interview with Ms. Chen," he said, trying to ignore the receptionist's raised eyebrow as she glanced at Lily. "I see you've brought company," she said, her tone making it clear this was highly irregular. "My daughter's school called. She has a fever, and my backup childcare fell through. I know this is unprofessional, but this job means everything to us. She'll be quiet, I promise." The words tumbled out before he could stop them. The receptionist's expression softened slightly. "Take a seat. I'll let Ms. Chen know about the situation." What Mark didn't notice was Alexander Reid, the 42-year-old founder and CEO of Everest Industries, standing near the security desk, observing the exchange. Reid had built his company from nothing into a $4.2 billion enterprise through ruthless efficiency and an unwavering focus on results. He had little patience for excuses or personal problems interfering with business. As Mark settled Lily on a lobby chair with her coloring book and a small cup of water for her medicine, Reid found himself watching with unexpected interest. There was something in the gentle way the man spoke to his daughter, the careful manner in which he helped her take her medicine, that stirred a long-dormant memory. "Who is that?" Reid asked his assistant, nodding toward Mark. "Checking now, sir," his assistant replied, tapping on his tablet. "Mark Winters. Final interview for the senior accounting position. His resume is impressive, MBA from State, 8 years at Meridian Financial before they downsized. References call him brilliant with numbers. Reid nodded, his eyes still on the father and daughter. And the child? Not on the schedule, sir. Apparently, there was some emergency. Reid was about to turn away when he saw Mark pull out a worn notebook and begin reviewing what appeared to be interview notes while simultaneously helping his daughter color a picture. The man's face showed exhaustion but fierce determination. "Tell Ms. Chen I'll be conducting this interview personally," Reid said suddenly. His assistant looked startled. "Sir? You never conduct interviews below executive level." "Today I do," Reid replied, already walking toward the reception desk. Mark felt his stomach drop when the receptionist approached him. "Mr. Winters? There's been a change. Mr. Reid would like to see you in his office." "Mr. Reid? The CEO?" Mark whispered, panic rising. This couldn't be good. CEOs didn't personally reject candidates, unless the candidate had committed some egregious breach of protocol. Like bringing a sick child to an interview. "Daddy, who's Mr. Reid?" Lily asked, her voice small and raspy. He's the man who owns this whole building," Mark explained, gathering their things. "And we need to be on our absolute best behavior." The elevator ride to the top floor was silent except for Lily's occasional cough. Mark's mind raced through scenarios, none of them good. At best, he'd be politely dismissed. At worst, he'd become an anecdote shared among executives about interview disasters. Alexander Reid's office occupied the entire northeast corner of the top floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. The man himself stood looking out at the skyline, his back to the door when Mark and Lily entered. "Mr. Winters," Reid said, turning around. His voice was deeper than Mark expected, his presence commanding the room without effort. "And who might this be?" His eyes, sharp and assessing, fell on Lily. "This is my daughter, Lily, sir. I apologize for bringing her. Her school called just before the interview, she has a fever, and my childcare fell through. I couldn't miss this opportunity, so I made a choice I know isn't professional. If you'd prefer to reschedule, I completely understand." Reid studied them both for a long moment. Mark braced himself for dismissal, but instead, Reid gestured toward the sitting area of his office. "Lily, there's a comfortable couch over there where you can rest while I talk with your father. My assistant can bring you some juice and crackers if you'd like." Lily looked up at Mark, who nodded encouragingly. "Thank you, Mr. Reid," she said softly, clutching Mr. Flopsy tighter. Once Lily was settled with her coloring book, Reid led Mark to his desk. Instead of sitting behind it, however, he took the chair beside Mark's. "Your resume is impressive," Reid began, "but I'm more interested in what's not on it." "Sir?" Mark asked, confused. "You brought your sick daughter to a job interview rather than canceling. That tells me something about your character and your situation. I'd like to understand both better." Mark hesitated, then decided honesty was his only option. "My wife died 3 years ago. Cancer. The medical bills took everything, including our savings and the college fund we'd started for Lily. I was laid off 8 months ago when Meridian Financial restructured. The freelance work I've been doing barely covers our rent, and we're facing eviction next month if I don't find something stable." He paused, glancing at Lily. "I've had 6 interviews since being laid off. Made it to the final round 3 times, but there's always someone more recently employed, someone without complications. I couldn't miss this opportunity, even if it meant bringing Lily. She's usually with her grandmother, but my mother-in-law is recovering from hip surgery." Reid's expression remained unreadable. "And you believe you can handle the responsibilities of this position while being a single parent?" "With all due respect, Mr. Reid, I've been doing exactly that for 3 years. I've never missed a deadline. At Meridian, I managed their largest client portfolios while taking care of Lily. When Emily was sick, I worked remotely 3 days a week and still increased my department's efficiency by 22%. Mark straightened in his chair. Being a single parent doesn't make me less capable. It makes me more efficient with my time, more focused when I'm working, and more committed to providing value because I understand exactly what's at stake. Reid leaned back, a flicker of something, surprise, perhaps, crossing his face. Most people would have given me the answer they think I want to hear. They would have assured me their personal life would never affect their work. That would be dishonest, Mark replied. Life happens. Children get sick. Schools close for snow days. What matters is how you handle those situations and still deliver results. Reid nodded slowly, then stood and walked to the window. For several long moments, he said nothing, and Mark fought the urge to fill the silence. My father was a factory worker, Reid finally said, his back still to Mark. He raised me alone after my mother left when I was 4. He never missed a day of work, even when I had chicken pox and had to come with him, hidden in the break room with coloring books and quiet toys. He turned to face Mark. I built this company on the principle that results matter above all else. I've always believed personal problems should be left at home. Mark's heart sank. He'd failed before the interview had properly begun. But, Reid continued, I've recently been forced to reconsider that position. Last month, my COO, my right hand for 15 years, resigned. Not for another job, but because his teenage son attempted suicide. He said he'd been so focused on delivering results that he'd missed the signs his own child was suffering. Reid's gaze shifted to Lily, who was carefully coloring within the lines of her book, her small face furrowed in concentration despite her fever. I've been wondering if I've created a culture that forces people to choose between being good at their jobs and being good parents. Your situation has made that question impossible to ignore. Mark wasn't sure how to respond. This wasn't the interview he'd prepared for. Tell me, Mr. Winters, if you were to design an accounting system for a company like Everest, how would you approach it? The sudden shift to a professional question caught Mark off guard, but he recovered quickly. For the next 20 minutes, they discussed accounting systems, financial controls, and Mark's ideas for improving efficiency without sacrificing accuracy. Throughout their conversation, Mark occasionally glanced at Lily, making sure she was comfortable. During one such glance, he noticed she'd fallen asleep, Mr. Flopsy tucked under her chin. He automatically lowered his voice mid-sentence. Reid noticed. We can continue this another time if you need to take her home. She needs the rest, Mark said. But I should get her to a proper bed soon. Her medication will wear off in about an hour. Reid studied him for a moment. One last question, Mr. Winters. The position you applied for comes with significant responsibilities. It would require occasional late nights, especially during quarterly closings. How would you handle that with your daughter? Mark had anticipated this question. I've built a support network, my mother-in-law when she's well, a neighbor who's a retired teacher, and a parents group where we help each other in emergencies. For planned late nights, I'd arrange coverage in advance. For unexpected situations, I'd take work home after Lily's asleep. He met Reid's gaze directly. What I won't do is miss important moments in her life or leave her feeling abandoned. I promised my wife I'd be both parents for Lily, and I intend to keep that promise. Reid nodded, then stood. Thank you for your candor, Mr. Winters. I'll be in touch by the end of the week. Mark gathered a still sleeping Lily in his arms, balancing her and their belongings as he prepared to leave. As he reached the door, Reid spoke again. Mr. Winters? What you did today, bringing your daughter rather than missing the interview, it wasn't unprofessional. It was resourceful. 3 days later, Mark's phone rang as he was helping Lily with her homework. Her fever had broken the day after the interview, and she was eager to return to school. Mark Winters, he answered, not recognizing the number. Mr. Winters, this is Alexander Reid. Mark's hand tightened on the phone. Mr. Reid. Thank you for calling. I'm not calling about the senior accounting position, Reid said, his tone unreadable. Mark's heart sank. I understand. Thank you for considering. I'm calling, Reid interrupted, to offer you a different position. I need a new chief financial officer. Mark nearly dropped the phone. CFO? But that's an executive position. I applied for senior accountant. I'm aware of what you applied for, Reid replied. I'm also aware that you're overqualified for it. Your previous employer's loss reports show a 30% improvement in efficiency during your tenure as department head. The references I called, including your former CEO, spoke of your integrity and innovative approaches. You have the qualifications. But, Mark began. The CFO position comes with some modifications to our standard executive package, Reid continued. A flexible schedule that allows for school pickups and sick days. An emergency childcare service for unavoidable conflicts. And an office with a small adjoining room that could accommodate a child when necessary. Mark was speechless. Your interview showed me something I've been missing, Mr. Winters. Balance. Perspective. The understanding that efficiency isn't just about maximizing every minute of work time, it's about creating conditions where people can bring their best selves to work without sacrificing what matters most. I don't know what to say, Mark finally managed. Say yes, Reid replied. Everest needs your financial expertise. But more importantly, it needs your example. 6 months later, Mark stood in his new office, reviewing the quarterly reports that showed a 15% increase in overall company efficiency since he'd implemented his flexible work program. The initiative, fully supported by Reid, allowed employees with caregiving responsibilities to create customized schedules that accommodated both their work and personal obligations. The small room adjoining his office, originally intended just for Lily's occasional visits, had evolved into a company childcare center on the first floor, staffed by certified professionals and available to all employees for regular or emergency childcare. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. Reid entered, followed by a reporter from Business Weekly. Mark, I'd like you to meet Sarah Chen. She's doing a feature on our new work-life integration programs. Mark shook her hand, noting the recorder she placed on his desk. Mr. Winters, your story has become something of a legend in corporate circles, she began. A single father brings his sick child to a job interview and ends up revolutionizing one of the country's most traditional corporate cultures. What made you take that risk? Mark smiled, glancing at the framed photo on his desk, Lily and him at her school science fair, both beaming with pride over her first-place ribbon. It wasn't a calculated risk, he answered honestly. It was a father doing the best he could with an impossible situation. The real question is what made Alexander Reid see possibility where others might have seen only problems. Reid, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. I saw myself, he said simply. Or rather, I saw the child I once was, and the father who taught me that work ethic isn't about sacrificing everything for success, it's about finding ways to succeed without sacrificing what matters. The reporter looked between them. And the results speak for themselves. Employee retention up 40%, productivity increased, and Everest stock has risen 22% since these programs were implemented. The numbers are gratifying, Mark acknowledged, but they're not the true measure of our success. That comes in moments like yesterday, when our marketing director was able to attend his son's championship game without fear of professional consequences. Or last week, when our lead developer could care for her elderly mother after surgery without using all her vacation time. We're not just changing how we work, Reid added. We're changing what success looks like. And it started with a father who refused to choose between being good at his job and being there for his child. As the interview concluded, Mark's phone chimed with a text from Lily's school. Her class play was starting in an hour, she was playing the lead role. I need to step out, he told Reid and the reporter. My daughter's school play is today. Reid nodded. Give Lily my best. Tell her I'm looking forward to seeing the video." As Mark drove to the school, he reflected on how completely his life had transformed in 6 months. From the brink of eviction to financial security. From constant anxiety to a sense of purpose. All because he'd made the desperate choice to bring Lily to that interview. He arrived at the elementary school auditorium just as parents were filing in. Finding a seat in the third row, Mark spotted several familiar faces, other Everest employees who had children in the school. They waved and smiled, a camaraderie that extended beyond office walls. The lights dimmed, and Lily appeared on stage in her costume, her face serious with concentration. As she delivered her first line perfectly, Mark felt a swell of pride so intense it brought tears to his eyes. This moment, watching his daughter shine, was what truly mattered. And for the first time since Emily's death, he could be fully present for it, without the gnawing anxiety about work consequences or financial disaster. After the play, as children reunited with their parents in the school cafeteria, Mark knelt to hug Lily. "You were amazing, sweetheart," he said, straightening the paper crown that had slipped askew during her enthusiastic final bow. "Did you really watch the whole thing, Daddy? You didn't have to look at your phone even once?" Her eyes, so like her mother's, searched his face. "Not once," he promised. "I wouldn't have missed a second." Her smile was worth more than any promotion or paycheck. "That's because of Mr. Reid, right? Because he understands about important things?" Mark nodded, marveling at her perception. "That's right. He understands that being good at your job and being a good parent aren't opposite things. Like how you help me with math homework, and that makes you better at explaining numbers at work?" Lily asked, reaching for a cookie from the refreshment table. Mark laughed. "Exactly like that." As they walked to the car, Lily's small hand in his, Mark's phone rang. The screen showed Alexander Reid's number. "Go ahead, Daddy," Lily said with the wisdom of a child who had learned to share her father with work responsibilities. "Mr. Reid is nice. He might need help with something important." Mark answered, expecting some urgent financial matter. Instead, Reid's voice was relaxed. "I won't keep you long, I know you're with Lily. I just wanted to let you know the board unanimously approved the expansion of our work-life integration programs to all our international offices. Your presentation convinced even the most traditional members." "That's fantastic news," Mark replied, helping Lily into her booster seat. "There's more," Reid continued. "Business Weekly wants to feature you on their cover. The CFO changing corporate America, they're calling it." Mark was silent for a moment, processing this unexpected development. "You don't have to do it," Reid added. "I know you're not comfortable in the spotlight." "It's not that," Mark said slowly. "I'm just thinking about how different things could have been. If you hadn't been in the lobby that day. If you'd seen Lily as a problem instead of seeing us as people. If I hadn't been reminded of my own father," Reid added quietly. "Sometimes the most important business lessons come from the most unexpected sources." After ending the call, Mark drove toward home, glancing occasionally at Lily in the rearview mirror as she hummed songs from her play. At a red light, his thoughts drifted to Emily. She would have been so proud of Lily today. He liked to think she would have been proud of him too, not for the title or the salary, but for finding a way to honor both his responsibilities as a father and his potential as a professional. The light turned green, and Mark continued forward, just as he had been doing since losing Emily, one day at a time, one challenge at a time, always moving forward. 6 months later, Mark stood at a podium in Everest's largest conference room, addressing employees and press gathered for the launch of the Everest Family Foundation, a non-profit organization dedicated to helping single parents advance their careers while supporting their children. 3 years ago, I lost my wife and Lily lost her mother, Mark began, his voice steady despite the emotion behind his words. In the aftermath of that loss, I discovered that our workplace systems are often designed for people without caregiving responsibilities. I nearly became another statistic, another talented professional forced to choose between career and family. He paused, looking out at the audience where Lily sat beside Alexander Reid in the front row. But one moment changed everything. A desperate decision to bring my sick daughter to a job interview could have ended my career prospects. Instead, it sparked a conversation and eventually a movement that is transforming how we think about work and family. Mark gestured to the screen behind him, where the Foundation's first initiative was displayed, a scholarship program for single parents pursuing education while raising children. Today, we're committing $10 million to help other parents find their path without sacrificing their children's well-being. Because no parent should have to choose between being present for their child and providing for their future. The applause was thunderous. As Mark stepped away from the podium, Lily ran up to him, throwing her arms around his waist. "Mom would be so happy," she whispered. "I think so too, sweetheart," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. Later that evening, as they walked through the parking garage toward their car, Reid fell into step beside them. "That was quite a speech," he said. "You've come a long way from the nervous father in my lobby." Mark smiled. "Not so far. I'm still that same father, just with better resources and more sleep." Reid laughed, then grew serious. "You know, when I built this company, I thought success was measured in profit margins and market share. I was wrong. Real success is what you've helped create here, a place where people can do their best work without sacrificing their most important relationships." "It's what Emily would have wanted," Mark said quietly. "She always believed work should support life, not consume it." Reid nodded. "Wise woman. I wish I could have met her." "She would have liked you," Mark replied. "Especially the you of today." As Reid walked toward his own car, Lily tugged on Mark's hand. "Daddy, remember when you were so worried about that interview? You kept practicing in the mirror and your hands were all sweaty." Mark laughed. "I do remember. I was terrified. But it turned out to be the best thing ever," Lily said with the simple clarity of childhood. "Even though I was sick and you were scared." Sometimes, Mark said, lifting her into the car, the moments we're most afraid of turn out to be the ones that change everything for the better. That night, after tucking Lily into bed, Mark sat on his balcony looking out at the city lights. His phone buzzed with a text from Reid. The Business Weekly article had just been published online. The headline read, "How One Father's Courage Changed Corporate America." Mark opened the article and began to read, smiling at the opening line. Mark Winters never intended to start a workplace revolution. He just wanted to be both a good father and a good provider. In doing so, he showed Alexander Reid and Everest Industries that the two goals aren't mutually exclusive, and inspired a movement that's spreading across corporate America. The article detailed the changes at Everest, the flexible scheduling, the on-site childcare, the remote work options, and the resulting improvements in productivity, employee satisfaction, and retention. It quoted other companies that had adopted similar policies after seeing Everest's success. But the paragraph that brought tears to Mark's eyes came near the end. Perhaps the most telling measure of success isn't found in Everest's impressive financial reports, but in a simple question Winters asks employees during their annual reviews: "Have you missed any moments that matter this year because of work?" 2 years ago, 78% said yes. Today, that number has dropped to 12%. Mark closed his phone and looked up at the stars, thinking of Emily. "We're doing okay," he whispered. "Lily's happy. I'm happy. And maybe we're helping other families find their way too." In his office across town, Alexander Reid was also reading the article. His phone rang, his father calling from the retirement community in Florida. "I saw the article," the older man said without preamble. "This Winters fellow reminds me of someone." Reid smiled. "I thought the same thing the first time I met him." "You've done good, son," his father said, his voice gruff with emotion. "Your mother would be proud." "It was Winters' idea," Reid demurred. "Maybe so," his father replied, "but it took courage to listen." To change. That's on you. After ending the call, Reid walked to his window, looking out at the same city Mark was observing from his balcony. They were viewing the same skyline from different perspectives, just as they had once viewed work and family from different angles. Now their visions had aligned around a simple truth: success in business and success in life weren't competing goals but complementary ones. The best work came from people who were supported in all dimensions of their lives. The following Monday, Mark arrived at his office to find a small package on his desk. Inside was a framed photograph of him and Lily from the foundation launch, along with a note from Reid: "Sometimes the most important interviews aren't the ones we plan. Thank you for showing me what I'd forgotten." Mark placed the frame beside the photo of Lily and Emily that had occupied his desk since his first day. Past and present, loss and new beginnings, all part of the journey that had brought him here. His assistant knocked on the door. "The executive team is ready for your presentation on the international expansion." Mark gathered his materials, pausing to straighten Lily's latest artwork proudly displayed on his wall, a crayon drawing of their family, with Emily as an angel watching over them, and a tall building labeled "Daddy's Work," where stick figures of all sizes stood smiling. As he walked toward the conference room, Mark passed the childcare center where several employees' children were playing under careful supervision. Through the glass, he spotted the son of their newest hire, a brilliant programmer who had been out of the workforce for 3 years caring for her child with special needs. Everest's flexible policies had made it possible for her to return to her career without compromising her son's care. In the conference room, Reid nodded as Mark took his place at the head of the table. The journey that had begun with a desperate father and a sick child had transformed into something neither of them could have imagined that day in the lobby. "Before we begin," Reid said to the assembled executives, "I'd like to share some news. The Winters Initiative, our work-life integration program, has been recognized by the Department of Labor as a model for corporate America. They're recommending our framework as a template for other companies." The room erupted in applause, and Mark felt a surge of pride, not just in the recognition, but in the real changes it represented for families like his. As he began his presentation, Mark's phone vibrated with a text from Lily's after-school program. "Lily won the math competition. She says to tell you she used the strategy you taught her." Mark smiled, adding a quick note to his presentation about the connection between personal fulfillment and professional excellence. The evidence was all around them, in improved metrics, certainly, but more importantly in the stories of employees who no longer had to choose between being present for life's important moments and advancing their careers. The meeting concluded with unanimous approval for the international expansion. As the executives filed out, Reid remained behind. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "my father called after reading that article. He reminded me of something I'd forgotten. When I was a child and he brought me to the factory, his supervisor didn't fire him for breaking the rules. Instead, he created a small space in the break room where I could stay safely while my father worked." Reid smiled at the memory. That supervisor probably never knew how his small act of compassion affected our lives, how it allowed my father to keep the job that supported us, how it showed me that rules should serve people, not the other way around. "Sometimes the smallest decisions have the biggest impacts," Mark agreed. "Exactly," Reid said. "Like the decision of a desperate father to bring his sick daughter to a job interview." As Mark drove to pick up Lily that afternoon, he reflected on the extraordinary chain of events that had brought them here. From the brink of eviction to financial security. From isolation to community. From struggling to thriving. Lily bounded into the car, clutching her math competition certificate. "Daddy! I won! And I used the special trick you showed me for checking my work. That's amazing, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you," Mark said, his heart full as they drove toward home, toward the life they had built together from the ashes of loss. That evening, as they sat on their apartment balcony eating ice cream to celebrate Lily's victory, she looked up at the stars appearing in the twilight sky. "Daddy," she said thoughtfully, "remember when you were so worried about money and finding a job?" "I do," Mark admitted. "I was scared we might lose our home. But now we're okay, right? And you're helping other families be okay too? Mark nodded, marveling at her understanding. That's right. Sometimes the hardest moments lead to the most important changes. Lily considered this, licking her ice cream cone. Like when I got sick on your important day, but it turned out to be good because Mr. Reid saw that daddies need to take care of kids and work. Exactly like that, Mark said, pulling her close. Sometimes what seems like our biggest problem becomes our greatest opportunity. As night fell over the city, lights twinkled in windows where other families were sharing their evening routines, parents home from work in time for dinner, bedtime stories, homework help. Some of them worked at Everest, benefiting from policies that had begun with one father's desperate choice and one CEO's willingness to see possibility instead of problems. Mark thought about the ripple effects of that single moment, how it had transformed not just his life and Lily's, but potentially thousands of others as companies across the country began adopting similar approaches. He remembered something Emily had often said during her illness: "It's not the years in your life that matter, but the life in your years." She had packed immense love and meaning into her too short time, leaving a legacy that continued in Lily's smile and in Mark's determination to create a world where family and work strengthened rather than diminished each other. As he tucked Lily into bed that night, she asked for the story of the important interview day. Again, it had become her favorite bedtime tale. Once upon a time, Mark began, there was a daddy who was very worried about taking care of his little girl. He told the story as he always did, emphasizing not the fear and desperation he had felt that day, but the courage and hope that had carried them through, the same courage and hope that continued to guide their journey forward, one day at a time. And somewhere, perhaps, Emily was watching, proud of the father and the man he had become, someone who had turned adversity into opportunity, not just for himself and Lily, but for countless other families facing the same impossible choices. In that moment, Mark knew with absolute certainty that they were going to be okay. More than okay. They were going to thrive. And in doing so, they would help others find their way as well. That, he thought as Lily drifted off to sleep, was the most important success of all.